keep it going. This time, with my good friend, Stephen Lyman. Oh, man. So good to see you, Stephen.
How are you? Nice to see you as well. It's been a while.
I am doing great. I mean, I know exactly what's behind you there, but how is that going for you?
Going well, going well. Yeah. Uh, we spend a lot of time thinking about Japanese spirits and it's a it's a fun little thing to do. But yeah,
so,
different part of my life.
so I met Stephen in Florida, 2020, First Pitch, Florida. Had a wonderful weekend, and I, of course, learned that Stephen is an injury expert. And please tell everybody your background.
Sure. So I studied injury epidemiology. Nobody knew what an epidemiologist was in spring 2020. Now everybody does. Thank you, COVID. But I basically applied the same methods that you would use to study infectious diseases like COVID to studying injury prevention and also treatment. And so I've been doing that now professionally for wow over 20 years.
Oh my.
And yeah, and as a lifelong baseball fan, I applied actually my interest in baseball to injury prevention, and I studied pitching injuries in children as my dissertation topic, which led to a grant from USA Baseball and eventually led to the establishment of the pitch count limits for Little League nationwide.
Look at that. And I remember this. We did this panel, I believe the very first PitchCon, or maybe it was the one that followed, but I loved it. It was essentially going through the players that we consider as injury prone or have questions for the year ahead. And you give your 2 cents on it. And I remember one quote from it that it sticks with me still. It's that pitching is attrition. And it doesn't matter how we say, like, no, they're fine with it. No, it is constantly just tearing away, wearing you out. It is attrition itself. And I imagine that still holds up today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to the pitchers, I think. But I saw that list and I was like, the first thing I thought was pitching is attrition. Any of these guys could come through and hold it together for 150, 200 innings, and all of them could be done in 20 innings. So
Yeah.
you just never
Oh
know.
man. So this is what we're gonna do. I sent Steven a long list of just guys that I thought of that had any sort of injury stuff. I initially went through roster resource and I went through all of their injury questions entering the season. There are more than I listed, which is shocking because I gave a giant list. We're likely going to go through these somewhat quickly because I do want to. I think there are bigger ones than some of the stuff that we did. Sorry, I have this giant list, and there's some that are more important than others. But I
Sure.
do want to kind of go through in order, and we'll just kind of talk it out. There'll be stuff that is repeated. Some people got the same surgery. Some people are dealing with the same stuff. But I want to preface this by saying injuries are the hardest part, and volume is so difficult to predict in the year before. I think it's the hardest part of what we all do. You heard it this morning and the projections panel with Rudy Gamble, Ray Murphy, and Derek Carty, how difficult that can be. And this is just to give a good sense of what these mean for these players, what they're dealing with, and how we can get a better perspective of what to expect moving forward. And I couldn't be more fortunate to have someone like Steven here to help me navigate all of this because, boy, do I not know what the heck I'm talking about. Okay. So let's start with some infielders. Let's start with Jose Ramirez, who got thumb surgery. I haven't really talked to anyone who said that they're concerned about this. Is this something that actually should be on our radar?
It's not. He had the injury in June and he played all season. He ended up with nearly 700 plate appearances over 157 games. So I think he just got it cleaned up. He's going to be good to go in spring, as far as I can tell.
There you go. All right, easy. So this is how it's going to be. We're just going to keep it going. Okay. Trevor Story, obviously big deal with elbow surgery here. We heard Chaim Bloom say maybe he's not going to make it back the entire season. We've seen it before. I remember Didi Gregorius, I believe Gleyber Torres. No, okay, maybe not Gleyber. I don't remember who else, but they also had Tommy John surgery as a hitter, not a pitcher. How what is the timeline usually, and how should we expect this to impact him?
This is an interesting one because he actually had what's known as a bracing procedure. This is a new alternative to Tommy John.
Hmm.
It's a repair with an augmentation rather than actual reconstruction of the elbow. The return times thus far in early data is faster. than the recovery from Tommy John. However, most of the people that have this are pitchers, so the pitching recovery is faster. That should suggest that the hitter recovery is faster as well. The trouble is that he had the surgery in January,
Mm,
and so you're still looking at 4 to 6 months before he's uh, back on the field. 4 is very optimistic. I think you're probably looking at 6. And then how good is he going to be as he's coming back? Not having had a spring, that sort of thing. So, and he also had a down year last year. I'm a little worried. I think one setback with this recovery and his season could be gone.
yeah.
So I'm avoiding Trevor's Story personally.
It is interesting to hear, let's say 6 months or so. And does that include the rehab that he would go through?
The what I read about this procedure is they're talking about back to competition. So
Okay.
four to
Yeah.
six months to be back on the field. But again, that's no setbacks, and that the
Right.
procedure was done correctly. So again, new operation. Not a lot of surgeons are doing it yet. So I think the jury's still out on this one. So
So
I tend to worry about guys who get experimental treatments.
absolutely. That does make it more optimistic for me in leagues that have 5 IL spots or so that actually, yeah, does sound like Trevor Story will be playing for the Red Sox in all likelihood this year. Sure, there's a chance that setbacks, all of that, he gets on the field and he still doesn't feel right, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
But still, 6 months, All-Star break. I mean, that's very nice. I mean, that's 7 months, really.
Hmm.
So that actually is a significant chunk of the league where it could be a case where if you want to take a chance with certain second baseman early on in the year, you can have a backup that is in the second half that could be Trevor Story. It opens the door a little bit more than I think I was even considering. Thinking Tommy John in January, there's just no way. Even if it's 8 months, that's still too much. But 4 to 6, a little bit more of an impact can be made.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
let's
it's yeah. Are you happy with the discount for half a season of Trevor's Story? I guess is the
exactly
question. With
right.
the potential for zero.
I mean,
So
honestly, a draft Champions League. That's not even. Sure, I'll just take him now. I was kind of thinking he wouldn't be touched at all, but now maybe a little bit. Jared Walsh, thoracic outlet syndrome. Not great to hear those words for Jared Walsh.
it is not. That's a scary one. We've almost always heard of this in pitchers, and it's often career ending. Even if they come back for a little bit, they tend
Adam
to
Wainwright, how
finish
did
pretty
he do
quickly.
this? Adam Wainwright, right? He did.
Yeah,
He had that. Unbelievable.
yeah. Well, it's also
Uh,
like Tommy John had Tommy John, and then it didn't work for anybody for a long time, and then
right,
it started working for lots of guys. So
right.
maybe they got something right with Wainwright. Now, looking at another hitter that had that, he's not on the list, but Mike Zunino had this
Mm,
surgery early last year, and he ended up signing a $6 million deal in the offseason. So it seems like this is something hitters can recover from. It's nice to know that there was a reason why Walsh was having difficulty last season. So hopefully this will get him to recover. I don't have any estimation on how long it's going to take to uh, for him to recover. They seem to think he's ready for spring,
hmm
but and anything. It's just such an uncommon operation for hitters. I
Yeah,
don't know what I would do. I probably would avoid. I feel like there's other guys out there that
yeah.
don't have this risk, but
Now
it also depends on
it
his price.
it does makes me wonder with TOS. It's more. It feels like it's more of a throwing issue as opposed to a hitting one. Can you
Yeah,
go
but
a little bit
it's
more
I.
detail into that?
So I'm not as familiar with this procedure again or this injury specifically because it's so rare, but I think what you're talking about is violent motions is what
Right.
aggravate this
Okay.
even after you've had it fixed. Pitching is a more violent motion than hitting, so I'm not sure. It might work better for hitters, but again, there's just so little information about this. It's a really
Ah.
tough one to call.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to Tim Anderson, who had hand surgery in this offseason.
Completely fine. It was a really
Completely
minor
fine.
procedure. Yeah,
Okay.
not worried about him.
All right. Good. I love Tim Anderson. I love watching Tim Anderson. I think every Chicago White Sox fan will tell you how much of a fan they are of Tim Anderson. He's one of those guys that I watch him play and I'm jealous that he's not on my team. I've always felt that way. So good. He's fine. I shouldn't worry whatsoever about him. Great. Alberto
Yep,
Mondesi, huh? He's now a Red Sox. Torn
he is.
ACL there. Is he okay?
Uh, he's in which way?
Yeah, right.
He's been one of the most talented, most frustrating players. But yeah, it's his first ACL tear. Recovery usually takes less than a year. Uh, but he relies on his legs, right? So if for some reason he has some residual pain, discomfort, stiffness from the surgery, he might not be quite the player he was before as far as his speed. Um, and we won't know until he's out on the field and running and around the base paths in game action. So again, I'm guessing the price is going to be good, so he might be worth it if you need some steals. But um, ACLs in baseball are funny. They seem to sap speed more than in some other sports.
Right. I mean, yeah, you don't want that from Mondesi. I mean, I think we all kind of I threw that one in there, but it's like, but it's Mondesi. There are a lot of issues here at play.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I can kind of say the same about Byron Buxton, arthroscopic knee surgery. Is he at
Yeah,
least good to go now,
yeah.
for whatever
Buxton,
happens after?
his procedure was quite minor. It's not like
Hmm.
an ACL reconstruction, which is a major knee operation. Buxton, other than his usual injury risk because he
Yeah,
plays at 135% all the time, he should be fine. Another player though that tore his ACL was Royce Lewis,
right.
who is also on the list, and he had his second ACL reconstruction on the same knee within 2 years.
Oh man.
That's typically career-ending for example, a soccer player.
Hmm.
It won't be for a baseball player, but he was running a lot in the minors before his first injury, and he's now running very little, and he'll run even less.
Oh man.
So, yeah, I don't think Roy Lewis is a good investment if you're looking for speed from him.
That's a great point. I see some chat is asking about a few players. We're going to get to all of them. We've got a long list here. We'll get there. Cal Raleigh had a torn thumb ligament, and like Jose Ramirez, it sounds like you're not concerned about that.
That's right. He had and actually his injury was toward the end of the season,
Hmm.
but he had the same surgery around the same time as Ramirez. So I think they're both going to be fine. Of course, catcher's just a tough position, but I think he's going to be okay.
Yeah, too many two seamers on the glove. You have Brandon Belt, also with knee surgery. I feel like I've heard that one before.
Third time.
Oh my.
So yeah, he's got a degenerative knee. It sounds like so. Originally had a meniscus surgery, which is usually an excision of part of the meniscus, which is the secondary stabilizer in the knee after the ACL. He's going to be playing on a wonky knee for the rest of his career, and probably will have arthritis later in life. But is he in a full time role on his new team? And
Right.
if he's in a platoon, he's probably going to give you what you would expect from a platoon. I'm
Nice.
not too worried about him. He might need a day off here and there, but no, I don't think you're going to see anything that ends his season unless it flares up, in September or something like that.
Sure. And his teammate George Springer obviously has a lot of injuries on his resume. Bone spur removal seems like a good thing as opposed to a negative.
Yep, bone spur removal, pretty routine even in pitchers, so not worried about it in a fielder.
Good. Good stuff there. Tyler Stevenson, fractured clavicle. Oh
Yep,
boy. Is he all right?
I did this as a child.
Oh no.
um, I didn't have surgery because baby children heal like
Yeah,
anyway.
right.
So, but no, he had it surgically repaired and he started taking batting practice in November. So I think he's good to go.
Okay. And is that something that sticks around in any way and affects you?
No, not if the surgery was done well, and it seems that it was. Fractures heal. It's
Hmm.
actually sometimes better to break it and get the bone to heal, which will heal hard, rather
Right.
than tear a ligament, need to have it reconstructed, and then that can lead to
That makes
residual
all the
problems.
sense.
So
How did you fracture your clavicle?
I fell out of bed and just
Oh
landed wrong
no.
on my shoulder. I was sleeping in a big boy bed. I was probably 3 or 4 years old. Rolled
Hmm.
out of bed, and yeah, my shoulder hurt, and I wouldn't stop crying. And my parents took me to the ER,
Oh
and
my
they said,
god.
"No, he's fine. Take him
What?
home." Yeah,
No.
no, I went home. They took me back, did an X-ray, and found the broken clavicle. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
I had a when I was 3 or 4, I was stepping into the bathtub, slipped, and I hit my chin onto the tile. And my parents weren't home, so there was a so my
Oh wow.
babysitter. This is back in like 1990 or something like that, 1992. And so my parents came home to a note from my babysitter that I took Nick to the hospital with like a trail of blood from from the tub. And my mom left the house and saw our neighbor parking the car and was like, "You have to take me to the hospital. Like Nick is there." And the neighbor said, "Is it lethal?" Because that's how hard it is to get a parking spot in New York. Um,
Oh, that's funny.
so yeah, that was my first thing in the hospital when I was a kid or whatever. Not a clavicle, but I still have a scar right here
Yeah.
apparently, on my chin. But anyway, I'm happy we're both well now, and so is Tyler Stevenson.
Yeah.
Um, Joey Votto got left rotator cuff surgery. How is he doing?
Rotator cuff surgery is probably career ending for pitchers. Joey
Right.
Votto's 39 years old. He does rely on his shoulder to swing his bat. I'd look elsewhere. I'm just
Okay.
not interested,
Yep,
especially
that's
after his down season last year.
sure. You have really DJ LeMahieu and Chris Bryant with plantar fasciitis. I believe Bryant got the surgery. I don't know if LeMahieu did. I think he did. What does that normally look like?
It's annoying and it can be very painful for the player, but it's not usually something that lingers for a long time. It's something you can
Hmm.
usually recover from. Um, if it does linger, if he has a setback again, it's going to affect playing time. But I don't, again, not a season-ending injury usually. So just
And just
temper
remind everybody
expectations a
what
little.
exactly that is. Obviously, we know it's a foot injury, but what does it exactly mean?
It it's actually it's an inflammation of the tendon sheath on the bottom of the foot,
Hmm.
and so it's painful to walk, painful to run, painful to do things with your foot.
Hmm.
I think it can usually be managed with painkillers and that sort of thing, and anti-inflammatories. Because if you can get the inflammation of that tendon sheath to go down, the problem goes away. And hopefully
Right.
these guys have had the off season to let that happen and let it heal, gotten proper treatment, and I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, maybe it was Matt Holliday, but there was some hitter who constantly dealt with it.
Hmm.
And it felt, uh, oh man, who was another Rocky guy that always had to deal with it? I can't remember, like Brad Hop or something like that. I don't remember. Um, but it does seem like it is something that comes back in some
It can,
fashion.
yep.
But is that without surgery, or is it even if you do get surgery?
Even if you do get surgery,
Hmm.
potentially, I think it's pretty uncommon to operate on plantar fasciitis unless it's pretty severe.
Okay,
Uh, Certainly, it's probably more likely to recur with non-operative treatment, so you might have more faith in somebody who had it operated on. On the other hand, they had a worse case of it,
sure.
and anytime you have surgery, there are risks associated with that.
All right.
Something
So I
didn't go
mean,
well, and they, yeah,
so it does seem kind of like Chris Bryant's an interesting one coming back from this. It was clearly affecting him. Plays in cores. I I'm kind of interested in this now. This is my biggest takeaway so far. I wonder if he has third base eligibility still because my gosh, I need third base help in all my leagues. Jazz Chisholm Jr. had a torn meniscus. Now expected to play center field for the Marlins. How are we feeling there?
so he had a meniscus surgery, which is similar to what we talked about with Brandon Belt, but Belt's now had three knee surgeries. This is
Right.
Chisholm's first. So if the procedure worked, which it seems to have, he should be fine and back to full activity for spring. The downside here is more long term. If you're looking at keeper or dynasty, is that it may end up sapping his speed faster than it would have if he hadn't injured his knee. But I
Okay.
think he's going to be fine for this season.
There is one hitter I didn't mention on this, and we have a couple more to get to, but I don't want to forget because I didn't put it on the list. Carlos Correa, what is going on here with these physicals? Is he all right? Can we trust that he's okay for a season?
I think you can trust him for this year. I don't think
Hmm.
you can trust him for 6 years or 7 or 13 or
Right.
whatever numbers are being thrown out. My guess is he has a degenerative knee, probably a little bit signs of arthritis. This is all just speculation based on what I've read
Sure.
about it in the press, but it seems like there's enough concern about whether or not his knee is going to hold up for the rest of his career, uh, because again he plays a high impact position. If he
Right.
was a corner outfielder, maybe it's a little bit less concern.
Hmm.
But you're not paying that kind of money for a corner outfielder as a team.
Right.
So I think,
Right.
but I don't, the Twins were happy with what he did last year. I think they if they can come to, did he actually finalize his third
Oh
deal?
yeah, he's finalized with the Twins now.
Yeah.
There's no
Okay. All right.
yeah. All the gifts
Yeah.
about doctors not carrying anything. I think my favorite one was the bouncer essentially patting him down but being like this, just not even touching him, you know.
Yeah.
Those are the doctors finalizing that deal.
Yeah. That's,
Um
yeah. So, but again, the Twins saw a great season out of him last year. There's no reason he's not going to give a couple more, three more, four more. It's just that how many years is he going to be productive and be able to play at an elite level on that leg?
Absolutely. All right, cool. I remember that one. I meant to put it down. And we have Jesse Winker, both knee
Yep.
and neck surgery. He's returning from. He had a great season with the Reds. Obviously injured then a bit. Came to Seattle. We all expected a regression given the change of park, but there still felt like there was more to it with his health. Do you think that he's possible to bounce back this year?
His knee was also a meniscus, so same
Hmm.
deal as Jazz. I wouldn't worry too much about it, especially because he doesn't rely on his speed
Sure.
as much. And then with it's the neck, neck surgeries tend to be better to have than back surgeries. But again, we all know those players who, at some point during their career, they develop neck or back pain, and then they're missing a few games here, a few games there. So maybe you just lower your projections for his plate
Playing
appearances.
time. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So essentially, if Seattle says, "Look, we have a decent amount of outfielders we can go through. We're going to give Jesse Winker a day off or two every week, just to make
Didn't
sure
he go
that
to
he's all
Milwaukee?
good." Oh, right. Of course, I'm being really dumb. It's a hitter, Steven. I don't know anything
Sure,
I'm doing.
fair, fair.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, they might actually need more of his help then. Uh, oh, I appreciate
Yeah,
you for
Seattle
telling
did
me
decide
that.
they didn't
Yeah,
need
they're
his
like, we don't need this.
services.
Yeah, right. All right. Let's go to Bryce Harper. Obviously Tommy Johns we were
Yeah,
talking about before. Did he get the same surgery that Trevor Story got?
he did not. He got the full
Okay.
TJ. So you're looking at a longer recovery. Uh, and now I think he had the surgery earlier in the off season than Story did.
Yes, he
Um,
got it, I believe, in November.
yeah, that's right. Where Story was in January, so you got 2 month advantage there, and probably a 2 to 3 month longer recovery. So we are probably looking at All Star break and probably
Mhm.
DH only once he's back, and that's probably true of Story as well. Early on, once he's back to playing, it'll probably be a DH situation for a little while. May not affect because they already have position eligibility for fantasy, but that could affect playing time for other guys. So
Right.
in the field, so I think he's going to be okay. But again, if you're happy with the price
Yeah.
and half a season of Bryce Harper, right?
Oh, that's always so hard. I mean, for me, the way that we've treated it, it's very rare for us to do this for a hitter to say, cool, they're back halfway through the season. It's more
Mm-hmm.
so for a pitcher. We've dealt with
Mm-hmm.
this all the time because of Tommy John, right? So I have a reference point for that, which is generally around pick 150, 160 is when we start considering it. I mean 14th round, 15th round. So that's
Mm-hmm.
probably where I'd be putting Bryce Harper then too. I
Yeah.
also would feel more confident that Bryce Harper will make an impact in that second half than I would a normal pitcher coming back from Tommy John, which is likely a higher chance of a setback. We
Mm-hmm.
think All-Star break, but that could be September. So it does seem like, and correct me please, that it's a lower chance for Bryce Harper to be set back all the way to September.
I 100% agree with that. I was actually going to make that point that I think with pitchers, they're much more likely to have a setback during recovery from Tommy John. So there should probably be a bigger discount. And also, pitchers tend not to come back at as elite a level as they
Hmm.
were prior to surgery. It usually takes them some time to recover and to get back
Right.
up to that level. If they're going to get back to it, they don't just come out of the gate,
Hmm.
throwing gas again. So I actually think Harper is a lower risk option than a pitcher with a similar surgery coming back mid-season. Both lower risk of having a setback, and then I think he'll also start hitting at a higher level than a pitcher
All
might in the
right.
same
I'm
situation.
gonna I'm gonna circle that one too. Have you heard of this guy named Fernando Tatis Jr.? Um,
Yes, I have.
yeah.
I also
How do
knew
we
his
feel about
father.
this? Yeah, yeah, right. I know. Yeah, Fernando Tatis Sr. I know him.
Yeah.
Labrum tear and wrist surgery for him. Obviously, of course, the suspension is gonna be about 20 games. into the season that
Yeah.
he's going to miss innately because of that, which won't be on your IL spot. That'll actually have to be a bench stash. But as far as injuries go, are you concerned about those impacting his performance?
Yeah, he's back to taking batting practice. I don't know if you saw the video that was posted the other day,
Again, it's a
but
hitter,
it's
Steven.
yeah. Oh, true, fair. It's the thing is it's batting practice. You don't know how hard the pitchers are, and he wasn't. It wasn't the Fernando Tatis swing that we know and love. It was he was taking it easy.
Hmm.
And you're talking about wrist and shoulder, so you're talking about two of the joints in the upper extremity. So he needs that to bat to swing. Um, I believe this is. I know he had another shoulder injury. I don't think this was. I think this might have been another surgery. I don't know if it's the same shoulder. I apologize for not figuring that out. But I don't like guys that are injury prone. But once you get enough of these things piling up, you just worry about what are the lingering effects of any of the surgeries he's had. So
Hmm.
I still think he's an elite player. Um, but he may have to do some swing modification. But I thought that after the first shoulder injury, and he clearly didn't. So, um, at least not. He still swung violently when
Yeah.
after he came back.
I I mean, it was his back before this, and of course he has
Hmm.
an accident that caused this. But I mean, should we be giving Fernando
Yeah,
Tatis the injury prone label?
probably not yet. He's still very young, and young
Hmm.
guys tend to heal faster and better than as the player ages. But this was his second wrist surgery.
Sure.
So that could point to potentially, as I mentioned earlier, arthritis or early degenerative problems, which are the reasons that guys like Correa can't get a long-term contract. Again, speculation on my part, but Tatis might start to have these nagging injuries that again start to tap into playing time.
Sure. That's a
Um,
great point.
but when he's on the field, I think he's probably gonna hit like Fernando Tatis Jr.
Yeah.
minus the PEDs.
Starling Marte has actually already been reported to be missing likely opening day for the Mets with the core muscle surgery. Um,
Yeah,
how
I
does that
think
affect
didn't
him?
I think David Dahl had something similar
Hmm. Oh no.
a few years ago with Colorado. So those are probably words you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
But I these soft tissue core muscle repairs are really tough to predict. Could be completely fine, could linger for a while. So I don't really have a good answer. That's a fuzzy one for me.
Oh
Eight
man. So
balls, let's try again.
that's huge though. I pretty much acknowledging the volatility of that injury. Um,
Yeah.
oh man.
Yes. So,
I'm
so again, if
not
you like the
touching Starling
price,
Marte. I don't want to take a chance at that. I mean, obviously the news of him being delayed has dropped him
hmm
in ADP, but
yeah, that's not a
it's
good
yeah,
sign because he had
it's
the surgery
still
a while
yeah, it's
ago.
still I think the first 10 rounds or so in the first 9 rounds. And so I mean, yeah, obviously sometimes it does and it's fine. G in the chat is saying Verlander had core surgery back in 2014 and it worked out well for him.
Hmm.
Good. But then yeah, as you mentioned, David Dahl, not so good. Really hard to
Yeah,
tell. I
cool.
mean, that makes sense for soft tissue.
Yeah, and also when you say core surgery, that just means somewhere in your abdominal
Right.
muscle region, and you don't know which core muscle was injured and how they repaired it and that sort of thing. So it's a pretty gray to me. And
So the
if he's
goat. Yeah,
reported
yeah,
not
sorry.
to be ready for spring training or for opening day, then
Yeah,
that's worrisome.
that is very worrisome. We have the goat here. We have Mike Trout. And what's going on with his back, and how much are we going to see of him this year? Do you think?
I read a little bit about what's wrong, and it's a rare condition, but it doesn't seem like it's something we should worry about. But again, I mentioned earlier, you get these players with chronic neck or back injuries that miss playing time here and there, and that just might end up being the same thing with him. But I'm really not worried about Mike Trout.
Cool. All right,
He's the
good.
goat.
Yeah, he is the goat, and I'm so glad we get to see more of
Yeah,
him. I have my Mike Trout book right here for those that
nice.
are in the know of Do It for the Story. Ronald Acuna Jr., who just quit the Venezuela League, has, of course, his knee injury
Yeah.
that I believe affected him to start the year, and then now it's come back in some way. Does that make you concerned for
Yeah.
the rest of the season?
This again, like I said, ACL reconstruction is a major operation for the knee. That's what he had originally. The knee doesn't always feel the same after that operation. It doesn't
Hmm.
feel like your original knee sometimes, and so he might just be dealing with some soreness, some residual, pain, maybe flexion limitation a little bit. Sometimes the operation is intended to restabilize the knee, and so sometimes it can be too tight. Um, so again, with guys who've had chronic knee problems, again, it can develop into something chronic. It may be leading to that with him, but again, I don't think I'd be too worried about him this year. I
Okay,
think it's
good.
more of a long-term concern.
Okay,
Yeah,
good
I
to hear because he's
expect
a
him to be
first round
better.
pick right now, first five
Sure.
overall.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
Maybe he should
Aaron
be fifth
Judge,
out
yeah,
of those five then.
yeah, there you go. Well, speaking of which, you have Aaron Judge, and I would say his teammate John Carlos Stanton have both been in this way of giant individuals with this unbelievable
Hmm.
strength, and there's concern about their muscles and their body really being able to keep up with it.
Hmm.
Do you share that concern after the massive season of Aaron Judge last year, John Carlos Stanton missing significant time once again? Is that just a constant thing we're going to see?
I think, yeah, you're right. With these larger players, there is that risk. I don't actually consider either of them injury prone.
Hmm.
Again, I don't like using that term very often.
Sure.
I mean, one of Stanton's major injuries was a beaning. I think we talked about this a couple
Right.
years ago when I was on. That's not really
Yeah.
like, oh, this guy's fragile. You got hit in the eye with a pitch,
Right.
or
Of course.
hitting the cheek. So, um, I think and Stanton's a little bit older. Judge obviously had the massive season. I'm not sure he's going to repeat that. We might see closer to his previous peak season, or even a little less than that. Um, but I mean, that's a speculation about his productivity rather than his injury risk. I wouldn't discount either of them or think of either of them as any higher risk than any other lanky outfielder, basically.
Okay. Well, that's good to. I mean, that's good to hear. That's clearly what has depressed, I think, their draft picks in previous years. And of course, you have Judge doing what he did last year. And it's good to hear that. Wander Franco missed significant time last year. Young, as you're mentioning, easier to
Yeah.
heal. Should we not be concerned about the injuries moving forward?
I'm not worried about Franco. He came back at the end of the season, uh, played at a nice high level, had the off season to rest, recover. So not worried about him. I think on the previous panel they were actually saying, who was it, Franco versus somebody. Now I can't remember who the other player was.
Maybe it
Was it
was
Chisholm?
Swanson or Chisholm or
I think it might have been
uh,
Chisholm.
okay.
No, 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 it wasn't. It was somebody.
Tim Anderson, Dansby Swanson, Willie Adamas.
Oh, it was Tim Anderson
Okay. Oh, yeah, right. They
and
both took
and
Tim
and Wander
Anderson. Yeah.
Franco.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I take Tim
they
Anderson too.
did. Yeah, I'm a I love Wander Franco, but
Oh,
yeah, he's
okay.
only 21. He's only
Right.
21.
That's a very good point. But yeah,
Yeah.
we're not concerned about his injuries. Jonathan India is coming back from injury.
Yep. Yeah, it was a strange injury, but I think he's going to be fine.
Hmm.
No concern there.
Oh man, I'm so in on Jonathan India then as my second baseman. There's really no injury concern from him. He had such a fantastic 2021. I would imagine that affected his 2022. Oh boy, that gets me very excited. Uh, and Luis Robert though, he's someone that is no stranger to injury.
Yeah, again, not worried about him. I think he's had some time to recover. I think he's gonna come back strong.
Great. Uh, let's move on to pitchers. And the perfect transition is the hitter and pitcher, Shohei Ohtani. Something I heard at First Pitch Arizona was Shohei Ohtani has double the injury risk because he plays double the amount. Would you agree with that sentiment a bit? Would you say that Shohei is more likely to get injured than other players that are going around the same picks that he is?
um, I don't think it's double. Hitters get injured less frequently than
Hmm.
pitchers, and also he doesn't play the field.
Sure.
So I think with the upside that he brings is worth that risk. Of course, he's had Tommy John surgery, and a second Tommy John could always be one pitch away.
Right.
Um, but I don't. I'm not. Of course, yeah. That's an interesting point that he is. He could end up with a core injury from his swing. He could, get hit by a pitch, break his wrist. There's lots of things that could happen to increase his injury risk. So yes, he's more at risk than just a pitcher or just a hitter, but he also gives you both.
Right.
So um, it's just part of
Yeah, we
his
were
risk profile.
talking to Eno earlier today. He mentioned about a 400 pitch honeymoon or 400 inning honeymoon for those with Tommy John, where they feel great, everything's good, and then the attrition of pitching kicks in when it comes to Tommy John. I guess we're getting somewhat close to that for Otani, about 130 and then 160 and change.
Mm-hmm.
So about 100 innings left or something along those lines till we get that 400 mark. Would you attest to something along those lines of after your first Tommy John, there's a certain amount of time before it starts affecting the same way again?
That I'm not sure about. I haven't seen sound data on that. I might just not
Hmm.
be familiar with any research that suggested that. I do know that Tommy John works a lot better than it did a while ago. There've been
Sure.
some advances
Yeah.
in the procedure. Pitchers sometimes come back stronger, so I don't have a lot of concern with Shohei. He's I'm also contractually said that as a resident of Japan, so I think
Very fair and good note there. We're going to move on to pitchers in full now. In chat, if you have other guys that were hitters that you wanted us to bring up as well, please do inside the chat. We might have some time at the end just to quickly go through them. There are a lot of guys that are just going to be like the same story, I think, with these. But that's okay, and I think it's important just to kind of go one by one here as we just did with hitters. That was incredibly helpful. And we're gonna get through them. But yeah, are there any hitters that we missed that you wanted us to touch on? Leave in the chat right now. We have I see Gurriel Jr. right now. Actually, believe I don't know what his injury was. Think I saw a hamate bone. But that might have been the hamate bone. I think that Yuli had a long time ago. Gurriel Jr.
um
had a hamate bone. It was him as well as hamate bone injury.
okay.
How does that normally affect? It looks like a recent surgery for that. Um,
Yeah,
would
he
you
had
be concerned
surgery.
about it?
No, when you have surgery for the hamate bone, you remove it. You remove the bone piece that is usually what gets aggravated if you don't have surgery. So
Mhm.
I think he'll be all right. It
Right, I
might take
believe
him a
Pablo
little bit to get
Sandoval
his.
had both removed, and it's like,
Yeah,
well, you can't get her anymore. There's no more hammer bones.
yeah,
All right, so let's go to pitchers now. The biggest one, I think, that everyone wants to talk about clearly is Tyler Glasnow coming back from Tommy John. I think there's more to the story of Tyler Glasnow than just Tommy John, given his history of injury.
yeah.
But he did pitch at the end of last season. Looked like he had his velocity. Would this be a year that you'd
Yeah.
be concerned, or actually thinking no, he can actually go out there and pitch a significant amount of innings?
I would temper my innings expectation. I think you're
Hmm.
probably going to see him on a short leash as far as pitch
Sure.
counts early on. Anyway, I think he'll be back in the starting rotation. I think he was doing a little bit of relief late last year, maybe like opener sorts of stuff. Wasn't
Right.
pitching,
Yep.
deep into games or
It
anything.
was 6.2
This year, I
innings
think you're going
total.
to. Oh, okay, yeah. So you're not going to see as much of him, maybe as you'd want. You might not be getting those 7, 8 inning outings, but you might be getting really elite 5, 6 inning outings.
Hmm.
So I don't have too much concern with him. But again, he'll build up his strength and should build up his innings as well.
Man, that makes me so much more interested in Glasnow. I mean,
But if you
Was saying the
let's
same
say
thing before.
120 innings from Glasnow, what's
Oh, if it's 120 though, so like
would you
150
want?
is what I think of like, hey, 30 starts of 5 innings, right? And
Mm-hmm,
that also
mm-hmm.
bakes in maybe one or two starts and being done, but then also some that are more than five. Um,
Yeah.
but
Okay. So let's say 130, 140. Let's say
yeah,
just a
130,
little bit
140
on
is
the.
not bad. I But Chris Sale obviously comes back from Tommy John, and then he has the fractured finger and he has the setbacks here and there. I mean, what's going on here?
Uh, yeah, he's had. I mean, I think he had some back issues a couple of years ago as well. I think
Yep.
he's tall. He uses levers. He's a pretty violent pitcher. Now the surgery that he had, the most recent injury was a wrist fracture, but it was his left wrist. Sorry, his right wrist, and
Hmm.
he's a lefty. So I'm not worried about that injury. But again, I think temper your expectations on innings. Although we've had to do that for like 5 years now.
Right. I mean, the thing
But
is,
yeah,
yeah, we've barely seen him pitch. But the
yeah.
wrist surgery, it sounds like shouldn't be a factor. The fractured finger, on his
Sh-
pitching hand. Should be fine.
should be fine. Yeah,
Okay, then all right.
yeah,
It's Chris Sale, let's go.
yeah,
Tanner Houck got back surgery. Is he
yeah.
okay?
Back surgery, 6'5". I'm a little bit worried about his durability.
Hmm.
Um, Back surgery can be tricky. There are procedures that work well. There wasn't enough information that I could find on what was done or how,
Sure.
so I'm not. It's a little bit difficult. Um, yeah, there's a risk there. Fortunately, he's young. It's a first surgery, so yeah,
Yeah, we'll see. We'll
not
see with Tanner
a
Houck.
little green.
Michael Kopech, like you were talking about before with knee problems, it feels like this is something that was nagging him. He didn't handle it. Now he just got surgery. So are you not as
Yeah,
concerned as someone, say, like Brandon Belt, who's dealt with it 3 times? This is just the
yeah.
first.
This is a first for him. It's the meniscus. This is a very common injury. I think
Hmm.
it's estimated about 75% of adult males have meniscus injuries
Oh
without
my
even knowing it.
gosh.
So
All right. Well, ticking
most of us don't
clock
need
for me
surgery.
then.
Yeah. Um, but it's not his plant leg. I think it'd be more risk of continuing aggravation with his plant leg.
Hmm.
So I'm not worried about him.
Oh, so it's his right leg. It's not his left.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I actually didn't know that. I mean, there is something to be said about it being the load leg, where
Hmm.
if you as you're in the wind up, you have your left leg up and you're right, and that's the one that bends down. If that hurts, I can understand. Uh,
Yeah. If he has residual pain, that could be a
right,
problem. But I think what I would be more worried about as far as re-injury and actually
yeah,
missing
is the
time
force coming
is
down? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because it's a stable. The meniscus, as I said, is a stabilizer in the knee. So when you're
Hmm.
doing that plant, if you hit the wrong spot on the mound, twist your knee a little bit on landing,
Sure, that makes a
then
lot of
yeah, you might
sense.
might re-injure it.
That makes me very encouraged. Actually, he got surgery of this. We saw him last year, Michael Kopech, where uh, he when he was throwing hard, he was great. And it was inconsistent because clearly this was bothering him, and he mentioned it was bothering
Hmm.
him. And now he's done the thing to fix it. Uh,
Hopefully,
oof, I might be all in on Michael Kopech right now. Um, someone's asking right now. He's on our list, and we'll do it right now because why not? Steven Strasburg. Any chance whatsoever? Stress reaction last year in his ribs, among other
yeah.
things through
This
the years.
this was a side effect of his thoracic outlet syndrome.
Right.
Uh, so many guys have had their careers ended by this injury. I'm I'm staying away.
So by the stress reaction.
Yeah.
Oh
Well, no,
man,
no, no. By
no.
the thoracic outlet
By the
syndrome, this
thoracic.
is now
Okay.
a
Yeah, yeah, okay.
this is now a side effect of that.
Right.
It's a problem because of that surgery.
Hmm.
That might signify an entire cascade of other problems. Just keeps him off the
Sure.
mound, and
Yeah, that
I'm just I
does not sound good. All right.
maybe if he's
Yeah.
still pitching next year, then I might be back in on Strasburg. I'm not sure that I want
Okay.
to touch him this year.
Sure. Tarek Skubal, flexor tendon surgery, not Tommy John.
But he had Tommy John in 2017.
Hmm.
Now he has another elbow problem. Um, probably a little bit like Glasnow. You might be looking at limiting his innings a little bit to keep him healthy or keep him on the mound, keep him pitching. Uh, Sometimes these flexor tendons are a precursor to Tommy John. You'll hear about the guy having that problem 1 or 2 years before he ends up
Right. Yeah. And then you get
having
a
his elbow
PRP
give up.
injection, and then it just
Yeah,
delays it. Like Griffin
yeah,
Canning
but
is what I think of.
he did have surgery for this for his flexor tendon.
Hmm.
So if that was definitive, if it worked, maybe he's going to be all right. But I think you're still looking at a little bit of an innings limit on Scooble.
Okay. Frankie Montas, he's been dealing with shoulder problems, and now the Yankees are saying he's going to miss likely a month to start the year with shoulder inflammation. What do you think is going on there?
Shoulders scare me in pitchers. They really, really do. The fact that he was shut down late last year and now he's going to miss the beginning of next year.
Yeah.
I'm getting pretty strong
Oh man. Uh,
warning flags
who is the
flashing.
number five for the Yankees? Why? Domingo Germán, Clark Schmidt. We had such a good rotation, and now we need one more.
Pitching is attrition.
Pitching is attrition. Oh man. I was
Yeah.
speaking of
Remember when the
shoulders.
Dodgers had like had like 9 starters
Oh yeah, it
in
was
a couple
Dodgeritis
years
because
ago.
all of them were all messed up all the time. Rich Hill was a part of it,
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah. I love Frankie Montas. I'm worried about him. I hope he
um,
can come back.
well, guess what? We have two more shoulder people here. We've got first one
Yep.
is Kyle Hendricks with a capsule tear. That sounds
Yeah.
terrifying.
So a capsule tear as I understand it, is a small rotator cuff tear
Hmm.
as opposed to a big rotator cuff tear. But he didn't have surgery. He's trying to recover non-operatively, but they're already saying he's going to miss opening day, and about 30% of pitchers who do this non-operatively end up going on to surgery.
Oh boy.
So I'm probably avoiding Kyle Hendricks, but I always avoid Kyle Hendricks.
Yeah,
I like
you always
strikeouts.
avoid Kyle Hendricks. I've been avoiding him since 2014, and then by night 2020, I was like, "See, I was right." Sixto Sanchez also has
Yeah.
been out of commission for ages. The idea is that he's pitching in spring training now. Do you have any faith in that?
Yeah, so he again had a capsule tear, but he had it surgically repaired. Trouble is he had a setback, wasn't able to come back, and had a second operation on the same shoulder. So we're now 2 operations in, hasn't pitched in what, over a year, at least not in a game. But I'm a little bit more optimistic on him than
Hmm.
Hendricks because he had the surgery, and he is so far removed from the big operation. Then he had a small operation, which was for bursitis, which is an inflammation of a bursa sac in the shoulder. It's not nearly as problematic as uh, something cuff related or capsule related.
Sure.
So I think if he's looking decent in the spring, I think he um,
Ooh.
might be okay.
Oh man,
It's
Steven. Those are some words.
yeah.
I mean, the thing is, we've all just this can't happen in fantasy where you get someone who you're all excited about for 2020 has this shoulder problem, misses all of 2021, and then repeats it 2022, and now it's just a kind of a joke of like, okay, there's no way this is going to work because it's happened before,
Hmm.
but that's not the case, right? We see this all the time. Guys just come back and they do well, and
Yep.
um,
I, I
he's
guess with him,
intriguing.
I would say if you end up taking the chance on him and he gets shut down with shoulder problem,
Okay.
that might be
I
time to
mean,
let go.
yeah, Sixto is someone, especially now that Pablo Lopez is gone. I'm sure they added Johnny Cueto, but the rotation has Trevor Rogers and Edward Cabrera now at the end with Luzardo, Cueto, and Alcantara. Theoretically, if Sixto is amazing in the spring, I wouldn't be surprised if he forces his way over, say, Edward Cabrera. Um, that could be so interesting. I love him as my 23rd round pick, my last round pick in 12 teamers, just to see how the spring goes. Something to consider there. Mackenzie Gore had elbow inflammation. Is it just something like, that's fine, he'll be okay?
Yeah, this was an interesting one. The imaging didn't show any structural damage. So they didn't see any evidence of a ligament tear or partial tear. He was shut down. He avoided surgery. I think if he's pitching well in spring, he's good to go. But again, that might be a precursor to something down the road. But
Sure.
pitching is attrition.
There you go.
He's kind of a classic example of it.
Um, so we're gonna shift now to actually looking at the top ranked starters, and there are so many of them that are just generalized injury questions, and I want to
Hmm.
get your 2 cents on them. So first and foremost, Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, are they just too old? Should we really be considering them for a good amount of innings this year?
Have you heard of a guy named Nolan Ryan?
I have, yes.
Yeah, yeah. They're not too old until they're too old.
Hmm.
I'm not really worried about them. Verlander obviously just came back and was incredible. So if he's got 400 innings after his TJ, he's good for at least another season or so.
All right. And Scherzer? I mean, Scherzer has
Well,
gone to the
he's
IL routinely.
Scherzer's got the back and neck issues, so that is, they're probably again cap on innings, but he should pitch well when he's pitching.
Right. Okay. Jacob DeGrom, what are we going to do here?
Yeah, again, it's shoulder.
Yeah.
I think he's elite when he's pitching, and he's probably just not going to give us as many innings as we wish we could see. We all
Right.
want
The
to see that
idea of
230
like 160
inning
innings,
season.
no way. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. All
unlikely.
right. I'm avoiding. I can't do that. Um, an interesting one here. Shane McClanahan had a shoulder impingement, but then came back, but I believe had a neck injury. The
Yep,
idea is that that was a product of the shoulder impingement.
yeah.
And then question marks after, and then he came back, pitched well in the playoffs. Are you concerned that this is going to linger here?
I'm not right now. The
Hmm.
shoulder, an impingement is basically when the nerve gets pinched and you get some pain. So it doesn't sound like it was structural with the shoulder. And of course, the nerves come from the neck into the shoulder.
Right.
So it makes sense that it's just probably irritation in two different points. He's had the offseason to recover. These tend not to be long term usually, so I'm not worried about McClanahan, at
All
least not
right.
this
That's
season.
whew.
It
Oh,
could
I
become
like that.
degenerative, right? This again could be something
Sure.
he deals with
But
for the
for
rest of
two,
his career. But if it's too,
2023, though, feeling
yeah,
okay. All
I,
right.
I would, I would certainly take him.
I am noting that one. I am very much noting that one because we all know the skill set of Shane McClanahan is absolutely elite. Brandon Woodruff dealt with Raynaud's disease last year and seemed like he was fine after that. Is this something that's just kind of in the past now?
Yeah, not worried. Now it's a genetic condition, so
Hmm.
it's something he will deal with. But if he's properly treated, no problem at all.
Cool.
Not worried.
Yeah, I have actually a little bit of it myself. So it's just my pinky toe. My left foot is just nope. Just says goodbye sometimes. Carlos Rodon, 2021, was fatigued with his shoulder at the end of the year, but did not have any issues in 2022.
Yep,
Are you still
not
concerned?
worried.
Not
Nope,
worried at all.
not at all.
Wonderful, because I love Carlos Rodon so much. Spencer Strider throws super hard. He's a smaller guy. Had an oblique injury. That's the soft tissue stuff, I believe.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the core. But he
right.
didn't have surgery. He's had
Hmm.
all off season to recover, but we haven't seen any updates in a while. So
Right.
I'm assuming no news is good news.
Sure.
The thing is when you talk about a core injury, an oblique, there are different grades of oblique injuries. You can have like a grade one oblique injury or like a grade four. And grade
Yeah.
four is where the muscle's pulled off the bone,
Oh
and that's
boy.
bad. A
Yeah.
grade one can just be a minor uh, kind of tear that
Hmm.
can heal relatively quickly. So I think he's going to be okay. I think it was just that he was injured late in the season, which is why we didn't see him come back last year.
Gotcha. Zach Wheeler is an interesting one because if there was shoulder stiffness, him and Gallen, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, likely more because they weren't ramped up with the start of the season last year with the lockout. And they
Mm-hmm.
just needed more time to get there and maybe a little bit rushed. But then later on in the year, we saw a forearm injury from him. And then we had this scary moment in the postseason where game two, his
Mm-hmm.
velocity was down. But then when he pitched in game six, it was as hard as ever. Do you have concerns about Zach Wheeler?
Yeah, so there's again, it's the we keep saying pitching is attrition, right? This is a guy who's had Tommy John before, but they don't see any current damage in his elbow. The forearm injury, I'm not worried about at all. I think he's going to be okay, but it's maybe temper innings a little bit.
Mm,
But yeah,
interesting. Oh
not too
man.
worried. Not as not worried as I am about some of the other guys we just talked about. But
Sure. Right. Um, I know you don't. You're prefacing all of this. I get to make my own
yeah,
decisions based off all of it. I just
sure.
want to let everybody know right now. I have to have McClanahan above Wheeler at this point, and Carlos Rodon above Wheeler too. Same with Woodruff. Just so you guys know, I am going to be making that adjustment. Verlander is going to be in there too. Scherzer and Degrom underneath. You have to do that. Okay, a couple more, and then we got to get going to the next panel. So we're going to go a little bit quicker on these. Freddie
Yep.
Peralta. I know he
Well,
hasn't
let's
pitched much.
let's pair Freddie with Andrew Heaney, who you have next on the list.
Beautiful.
Shoulder inflammation. See Frankie Montas.
Oh no, no. So we're like, we can't. We don't want to go after. Oh boy. Oh, that's tough. Okay. Jesus Luzardo.
He came back to pitch. I think that's promising. I'm not too worried about him. The price should be good.
All right. I love that. I'm a huge Jesus Luzardo fan. Clayton Kershaw.
Clayton Kershaw. So, I mean, chronic back injury. He's always going to be limited. He'll miss some time, miss a start here and there. But he just signed a $20 million extension,
Yeah.
1 season. So I think he's elite when he's pitching.
All right. And Luis Severino is the last one we have here. Chad, if there's anyone else that you want us to touch on, we have about a couple minutes. Leave it in
Yeah,
the chat right now. But hey, Luis Severino had the Tommy John, came back, and then had an
yeah,
injury in season. How are we feeling?
yeah. I was in on him last year. I think he's going to be all right.
Yeah,
I'm in on him again this year.
good, good. I like to hear that. Man, you have me thinking so much about how I have it ranked with McClanahan, Wheeler, Rodon. I mean, I feel like that's so important because there are these guys that are at a discount right now. Wheeler and Rodon are
Hmm.
both lower than their skill set are. And I was
Hmm.
kind of saying I kind of believe in Wheeler. He'd come back and do it, but you make a really good point about um, pitching is attrition and all, and it feels like
Hmm.
there's something up with this.
His
I
his yeah his he's piled up. There's more uncertainty with Wheeler, I would say.
Mhm.
That's how I
Sure.
think about it.
Lance Lynn is one that I'm getting questions about here. It was more of the knee stuff. I don't believe he got surgery. He may have. I and I know you didn't get a chance to talk about him. I mean, I'll give you Kenta Maeda right now. I think it's kind of simple. It is just coming back from Tommy John.
Yeah, I think you're in that situation where it's just gonna, it'll take time for him to ramp up limited
Hmm.
innings, uh,
I
that sort of
Lance Lynn
thing.
last year had missed 4 weeks with a knee injury. He got surgery on it. I
Yep.
they're not telling me if it was meniscus surgery or so. I'm assuming it is, but it was
Let me
on his
see
left
here.
knee, not his right.
It says a slight tear in one of the tendons of his knee, so that's actually more easier
ACL.
to recover.
Yeah. Oh,
No, it's not
easier.
ACL.
Okay.
It's a tendon, not a ligament. That I
Oh,
wouldn't
right.
worry about Lance Lynn if it's a knee injury and he had a tendon procedure. That should be okay.
Awesome. People are saying Eflin. I forget what happened to Zach Eflin. I will find it very quickly. But yeah, you guys are asking about Spencer Turnbull as well. It's the same thing with him on the
Okay.
with Tommy John. We kind of see how it goes. We'll take it from there. Zach
Yeah.
Eflin was dealing with knee soreness. It looks like.
Yeah. His knee soreness was a result. He had PCL surgery back in I think 2019.
Hmm.
So he had a minor procedure to deal with the soreness, and it was a fat pad. It was kind of a bursitis kind of thing. So I'm not too worried about him.
Good. Oh, wonderful. Oh man, Sonny Gray is the last one we're gonna do. Sonny Gray has dealt with injuries for a while. I don't think he's currently injured. I'm not really worried about that. I,
It
oh,
does not look like it. How
I,
old is he
yeah, I
now?
don't really. It looks like a back injury, and then a groin
Okay.
injury after that.
Groin, I wouldn't be worried about. Um, I don't see anything about a back injury. Let me see.
All right, wonderful.
Yeah, I
Well, there
think
you
I
go.
think probably okay with him.
Great,
Yep.
Steven, fantastic. That I gotta say, unbelievably helpful for us to frame what these injuries are like. We just hear, oh, he had an injury, then we get scared, and not all injuries are created equal. So
Correct.
thank you so much for taking your time
My
to
pleasure.
talk with us about this. I've missed this. It's great to see you.
Yeah. Nice to see you as
When are you
well.
coming back to the States?
I'll be back next month. I'll be in New
Oh
York for a
yeah.
couple of days. Maybe we can catch up.
Oh, please let me know.
Yeah, we'll do.
That would be wonderful. But really, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I
Thank you
had a
for
ton of
having me.
fun. And yeah, it's great to see you, Stephen.
Yeah, you too.